Well, I've talked about a few things so far, but I know I'm going to talk about something that I've been wanting to talk about for quite some time, and something that's been on my mind, and something that's bothered me, and something that's basically screwed my life up quite a bit. Now, this is all about scandal and moral and ethical corruption, or lack of ethics, one could say. And this story takes place within the anarchist movement, or scene, as I prefer to call it, because I don't think that we've got a movement. And if what I'm about to describe is a movement, then forget it. I don't want to be part of it. Anyway, as you well know, we're always on the ball when it comes to unearthing scandals. I mean, for example, with the left, they have plenty of sexual scandals. For example, nubile young female members being preyed upon by dirty old men that are the leaders and so on, the Workers' Revolutionary Party. And most left parties have got people that have committed rapes and so on, and the rapes have been covered up for the sake of party unity and so on. And we've always been the first to expose these, and always the first people like to point the finger of accusation, and quite rightly so as well. It's not only that that's the left, there's also the right as well, or the extreme right. Let's say, for example, the British National Party, known as the bullshitters nonsense party in some quarters, because if you look very carefully, say for example, of old issues of Spearhead, the amount of people in the BNP that have been caught downloading kiddie porn are in fact convicted of statutory rape and child molestation is quite extraordinary. And these cases are always highlighted and so on, and point out the hypocrisy of these people that are our self-appointed moral guardians. And in fact, they're just dirty bastards, the very dirty bastards that they themselves are condemning. Hypocrisy. However, I would like to say that the anarchist movement or scene is not free of these things either, and I want to talk about one specific case that's caused me personally a lot of grief because I outed the bastard. This is about a rape, by the way. I'm not going to go into any great details of the rape to say that, except to say that it occurred within a relationship. There might be some dinosaurs out there that think, well, you can't have rape within a relationship. But I think it's known even within the law that, and just by common sense, that there is rape within relationships and rape within marriages and so on. This is the 21st century and not the 18th century. So perceptions of this have changed. So this rape occurred within a relationship. Now, as I say, what you're about to hear may sound quite unbelievable and somewhat convoluted. I wanted to give what you might call a narrative description of what happened and so on. But I don't think that this is necessary anymore, as I want to talk about the wider subjects and the things that have come out of it. And it will be a damning indictment of a part of the anarchist scene as well. So they've got to get their house in order. But when you hear the end of the story, you realise that the house is built on a foundation that is as rotten as the ideology that's being perpetrated. Now, as I say, we're against the church, we're against the state, etc. So I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this to destroy the movement or anything, because actually I consider any scene or movement that covers up rape as something vile and corrupt, just like the church that covers up rape and so forth, or parties or anybody that covers up rape. So anyway, the rape occurred within a relationship. It was not known by people in general in the movement. We had no idea about it. I found out about it by accident, by the very person that had been raped, and she described her experience as rape. I didn't get the details, but she said it was rape. I asked her, is it rape? Is it Julian Assange thing? Or is it full-blown rape? She said it was rape, and therefore I believe her. Now, the individual that committed this rape is a big scenester and is well known on the anarchist scene in London, part of North London. He is also the head honcho, or was the head honcho, in an sexist, feminist men's group. So here we have someone that is proclaiming themselves to be a non-sexist, an anti-sexist, a pro-feminist, who has in fact raped his partner. Now you might think to yourself, oh, this is quite unbelievable, and I found it quite unbelievable. I was quite shocked at it. I have found cases of spousal abuse being covered up and so on, but when I found out that this anti-sexist man had raped his partner, I was horrified. She told me that she didn't want me to tell anybody and not to do anything. In other words, give him the fucking well-deserved kicking that he gets. He deserves. I mean, I wasn't going to give him a kicking anyway because, well, quite frankly, the creeper probably runs straight off to the police. So what happens when somebody gets raped? What do they do about it? What do their friends do about it? Well, there's a conventional way of dealing with it when the person that is raped goes to the police. Now, I'm not going to advise people not to go to the police because I think at least you should get it on record and maybe as a warning to other women, because rape cases are not taken very seriously by the police. But if you register the fact that you have been raped, they at least have to go through some sort of perfunctory thing. And I don't regard, if you've been raped, going to the police as grassing up. It's the person that's done the rape that's a criminal, not the person that's gone to the police to try and get some sort of justice. But as I said, you won't get any justice, or very rarely do you get justice in the courts and from the police. So we're anarchists. We don't believe in going to the police. We don't believe in the courts and the law and everything. You know, we know that it's sort of biased against us, and that major criminals get away with things and petty criminals get locked up, etc., etc. So how do we deal with rape? Well, how does anybody deal with it? If your partner is raped by somebody, or your sister, or a really good friend of yours, or your mother, or something like that, what are you going to do about it? Now, of course, when I spoke to some people in the anarchist movement, I was told, oh, your attitude is very proprietorial. Because I said, if someone raped my sister, or my partner, or someone I loved, I would go out there and deal with them fucking self, like, you know, and I wouldn't piss about, you know. They would be in a wheelchair at the very least, and that's it. And that's the way that we do. If you're not going to go to the police, how are you going to deal with a rapist? Basically, with the anarchists, or with any group, whoever it is, you know, it's right, left, religion, whatever, that you want that person removed from your ranks. You don't want to see them around. You don't want to hear from them. You don't want to see them. They've got to move out of town, move out of people's lives and so on, that we don't want them around. Any community has got the right to expel. I know it's rough justice, but if you don't go to the courts, this is what you've got to do. You've got to expel them from the body politic and give them a fucking good slap as well. And keep an eye on them. It's just a day of the internet, so if they move to another country or move to another part of London, other people can keep eyes on them, particularly if it's within a political scene, where they will be forever with a streak running up their back and will be defined and kept away. And people might say, oh, this is very cruel. But then again, you shouldn't go around raping people, should you? So this perpetrator, this rapist, the man in the anti-sexist feminist men group, who all of them tend to look down on other men as being macho and violent and sexist, why they themselves are so understanding and so on. To me, it's just a pose, obviously, to pull the chicks in the movement, or the women, or whatever you want to call them. Like, I would be called sexist for using the word chicks and so on, but if people behave like chicks, they are chicks. If people behave like idiots, they are idiots, in my view. And I know this might be what you might call language that could be regarded as politically incorrect, but I'm not a politically correct person, right? Whereas what I've faced is the vengeance of politically correct people when I outed the bastard. Well, anyway, the rapist was involved in a group that I was involved in. Unknown to everybody in the group, unknown to myself until I found out, and he rose to a position of responsibility. And my group was a fairly mixed group. In other words, it contained quite a large number of females, which is quite rare for any kind of political group, really. After all, even the anti-sexist men's group is all men. But I don't want to be too flippant here, but when I tell you what happened, you probably really say, oh, this poor bastard, what he's been through. I don't want to feel too sorry for myself. I want to get on with the story. As I said, there will be no narrative, really. So, this man is in my group. He has risen to a position of responsibility. And I was speaking to someone I know very well. I can't obviously give any names here. And she was complaining about the sexism from men in the anarchist movement. And it was a discussion held in a pub after a demonstration, a very spontaneous sort of discussion, a sort of discussion you have in a pub, and so on. There were other women present, and they themselves relayed tales of them being harassed, sexually abused, and generally given obnoxious sexist treatment by men in the movement. Just some men, not all men. But the anarchist movement is no different from any other movement. It contains its creeps, it contains its sexists, just the same as anything else. What gets me is all this posing and so on. And I say, you know, the anti-sexist man turns out to be a rapist. You know, you can imagine that. Well, this discussion had a profound effect on me and others, and I had to ring up and tell the person that had been raped that I could no longer bear the burden of knowing that this rapist was walking amongst us, was in our group, was in our scene, and I had to out him. And that was it. I received permission for this, and I outed him big style. He was immediately removed from our group and told never to bother to show his face again. When he was told this via the internet, he showed a very sort of flippant attitude towards it. Oh, well, guys, I'll see you around later on, or something like that. Words to that effect. I mean, obviously, hasn't taken us very seriously. So I found out that this non-sexist rapist in the anarchist scene was living in a squat in Hackney. So now you've got the geographical location. In Hackney, in a squat, with loads of women, including one of the women that we were speaking to the previous night about sexism and sexist men and sexist behaviour in the anarchist movement. So I felt, obviously, that as he was living with them in the squat, that they should know. And so that very night, I arranged to meet two of them to tell them that they were living with a rapist and that they should basically get rid of him. Imagine my surprise when I did meet two of them and was completely bawled out and told to mind my own business, that they were looking after him, that he was going through a process to cure him of his evil ways. I mean, these aren't the exact words, and a lot of the words were shouted. I was shouting, and I was being shouted at as well. It was quite a interesting confrontation. Other people overheard it. Now, what they told me was that they knew he'd raped somebody, even though he was living in their house, he was breaking bread with them, eating with them, mixing with them socially, in the house, outside the house. He was being treated as a normal member of the household, whereas in fact he was a rapist. These women, incidentally, are all feminists, anarchist feminists, right? And they're very politically correct as well. Will jump down your neck if you use the C word, or if you are seen lingering too long over a copy of The Sun, or just the clothes that you wear and everything. I know it's as well. A lot of this is vitriol is directed against the white working class, or people from the working class. Middle class men are somewhat different, aren't they? And the rapist, of course, as you probably may guess, was a middle class man. and a typical non-sexist man as well. Very short in stature, very camp actually in the way he talked and his behaviour. One would think that he was gay. He was an academic. He had little round glasses and a little academic beard and wouldn't say boo to a goose. And yet he is a brutal rapist. And these women were sheltering him, mollycoddling him, and God knows what else with him. So anyway, this led to a big row, and this led to simmering resentments and people taking sides. People taking his side or my side, and I'm going, don't take my side. I'm nothing to do with it. I've just outed the geezer. That's all. You know, I have performed, in my eyes anyway, a service to the movement or the scene. But no, suddenly all these feminists are attacking me verbally. I find myself boycotted. I find myself ignored. I find myself basically being treated like I'd fucking rape somebody, like, you know. And people crossing the road when they see me in the street, people ignoring me, people even coming up and insulting me. These are all women, they're all anarchists, and they're also supposed to be feminists. And I think they should be ashamed of themselves. I think that they're not only a disgrace to feminism, a disgrace to anarchism, but they're a disgrace to their own sex as well. Well, anyway, they told me, in between shouts, that this rapist was undergoing an accountability process. Tried to find out what it was. Of course, they were very reluctant to say what it actually consisted of, although I did find out later what it was, and I will tell you exactly what it is. But it seemed that part of it there was that he had to attend meetings and confess to his sin and try and sort out his problem and so on. When I told them that a man who was in the anti-sexist men's group could be extremely and a rapist would be extremely manipulative and able to skim around these people, particularly if he thought that they wanted to cure him, and particularly since they were concealing his crime, they didn't want to know. They said that I was interfering. I might fuck up the accountability process. I tried to warn them, but they didn't want to know, and I became a villain, and it caused me a great deal of stress, and I had been quite ill because of it as well. Well, I've been ill, but the stress of it and so on. Now, my group actually fixed up a meeting with one of these women. She turned up, staring at me like I was an animal in the corner, or a rapist, saying that someone had gone around spreading the name of the person that had been raped. Every single person in that room denied it, that they knew the name of the person that had been raped. And considering it was the group that I was in, they surely would have been the people that I would have told, if anybody. I didn't tell anybody. In fact, it was one of them that went around saying the name. And I've got witnesses to all this. Everything I'm telling you, there's witnesses to as well. But this is not a trial. This is just me describing an unpleasant situation. I could have written about it, but who's going to read it anyway? And anyway, the only people that will read it will be anarchists. But like this way, the whole world can know about it, and I don't fucking care. If it brings shame onto the anarchist movement, good. Because it's no fucking movement that I want to be part of if they behave like this. So anyway, this meeting takes place. I won't go into the details and so on. We all expressed a deep loathing of the man. We did criticise them for not telling us that he was a rapist. We did also criticise them for not telling him to bother to turn up to our group. But this is all water off a duck's back. These people are politically correct. They've got their own agenda. They thrust a whole load of leaflets and pamphlets at us, you know, from the west coast of America about how to deal with rapists and accountability groups and violence within the movement. All a load of gobbledygook and crap. If someone rapes your friend, you go and you fucking beat them up when you get them out of town. It's rough justice, but it happens. That's the way to do it if you don't want to go with the police. Go to the police. Make sure that they're dealt with. And that's it. Rough justice, right? Anyway, we had this meeting. It was tense, but there was no shouting. And she was allowed to have the last word, which gobsmacked us, in which she said, reading from a piece of paper, that the typical sexist man was loud, vulgar, brutal, etc., etc. A portrayal of someone from the EDL, perhaps, or a football hooligan, or a macho man, or maybe even myself, thus perpetrating a rape myth. Because the guy, as I said, that raped the woman, the rapist, is very small, very weak, not the sort of person that, is a macho man, and in fact the exact opposite. And one would think he is so camp, one would think that he was gay, so he's no threat to women. But there they are, perpetrating a rape myth. So anyway, I'll make sure as many people know about this as possible. I also find out what this accountability process actually is, and that's going to be with a vast bulk of things that I talk about. A second meeting was arranged for the movement in general, rather than my particular group, because these people that did the accountability group, that sheltered and mollycoddled the rapist, these people were going to form a group for victims of rape and sexual violence, which I really think is a bit of a fucking cheek if these people were sheltering a known rapist and doing other things with him as well, which I will go into in some detail. Well, I leave it to your imagination whether they were having horizontal relationships with him or had horizontal relationships with him. But from the very first confrontation I had with these people, it was like that they were defending a lover rather than a comrade. But I've got no evidence or proof on that, just intuition. So anyway, the second meeting come up. It was held in one of our meeting halls that we have in East London. Obviously, the perpetrator didn't turn up because he was told he wasn't allowed in the building. We didn't want to see him ever. But 3 other people doing the accountability group turned up, and about another, I don't know, couple of dozen other people turned up, including people that I don't know. In fact, many people that I didn't know. A lot of women, and people that had been sexually abused and raped and so on, and had suffered great trauma and wanted to know exactly what these people were saying. Well, there was a bit of a slanging match, and some people were saying, well, basically they were banged to rights, as they say. They were told that what they were doing is completely out of order, sheltering a rapist, and what was so special about him. If it was someone else that had committed a rape or a sexual assault, they want him beaten up. But this guy, for some reason is worth saving. Is it because he's the anti-sexist man? Is it because they've had relationships with him? Who knows? But it's definitely that he was worth saving and worth rehabilitating. And that's for this mysterious process. Nobody seemed to know what it was. They couldn't describe it. But I found out what it was. It's very interesting because the person who told me was the person that got raped. I must add that the person that got raped is friends with these people and subscribes to their rather unusual ideas. So therefore is part of their cult, if you like. She is a victim rather than a survivor. I think she's suffering from some sort of Stockholm syndrome, if you want my opinion. But then again, I'm not a professional psychiatrist, am I? I'm not a psychologist. I'm just an ordinary person who's read a few books, that's all, and can speak to the camera. So this meeting was exceedingly controversial, as you could probably imagine. But we were absolutely gobsmacked when somebody came in and actually said to us that the rapist, who was a very good friend of hers, hadn't actually raped anybody at all. That he'd been forced. He'd been going around saying that he'd been forced to confess to a rape that he did not do. So you've got all these women living with this guy, putting him through the process, the accountability, breaking bread with him, as I said, going out with him, having relationships of whether horizontal or otherwise with him. You've got all that going on. They believe that he's going to this accountability group, that, they're doing it in good faith, and that, whereas in fact he's been going around telling other people that he never raped anybody at all, and he's been forced to confess to something that he never did. And so therefore he is, to use the word that what his defenders were using, a scapegoat. Now, I have been trying to talk to these people, these women, and try to talk to them about the whole thing. I want to bury it. I want to finish it. I want to do what I do without having to brood on this all the time. But they don't want to talk to me. They're all too tired. They're all got other things to do. I'm too intimidating for them, apparently. But it's okay to live with a rapist. Well, that's okay. That's fine. And it's all right. It was proved, what I said in the beginning, was that he was running rings around them and taking the piss. He was taking the piss by going around telling other people that he hadn't raped anybody. That's taking the piss. When he had. Really taking the piss. But these people increased their actual personal hostility to me when the emperor was shown to have no clothes. And they were shown to have no clothes. So obviously, I found it most stressful. I was quite ill for about 3 months over this cold winter. And this stress did not exactly help me out. Didn't do me any favours. It's been on my mind ever since. And I'm saying I am boycotted. I can't go to certain events in case they might be there and there might be a row. I can't go into certain pubs because they might be there and there might be a row. As I say, I am being treated like a criminal. The criminal is being feted. I am being boycotted, and I'm deeply resent that. But anyway, I won't go on about that. What I really want to go on about is what is this process? What is this accountability process? What exactly does it consist of? What did this guy have to do, this rapist, in order to absolve himself of his sins? Well, first of all, people were asking them at these meetings and elsewhere, what is this accountability process? And they were unable to say it, and unwilling to say it, and also completely unwilling to say who was involved, because it appears there was a hell of a lot of people involved, a lot of effort going into mollycoddling one stinking little snivelling rapist, a lot of effort, a lot of hours, a lot of days and months, a lot of time. So let me tell you what the accountability thing is. Absurd. You will laugh when you hear this, but this is what it is. This is what the person that was raped told me that the accountability process is. 1. The rapist had to pay a sum of money into a rape crisis centre. Oh, that's great. You go out, you rape somebody, and for your penance, you don't say 3 Hail Marys, you give a couple of £100 to a rape crisis centre, and everything's forgotten as long as you do this process. So that was the first bit. The second bit was a bit more complicated, but this is what it all consisted of. He, the rapist, had to live with these feminists who knew that he'd raped somebody and who mixed with him on a social level, not telling anybody that he'd raped anybody, and telling anybody at all, didn't tell any of us. Obviously, we're not worth it. We're the proles of the movement, so what's the point of telling us anything, right? We're not worth it, If people hanging around us are raped and so on, it doesn't matter. The death of their pet tortoise is probably more traumatic for them than one of our friends getting raped or sexually abused and so on. But anyway, I won't deviate too much. I'll just go on to what this process is, this accountability process. Well, he lives with them. He broke bread with them, and this is the really weird bit. There's a set in Hackney where there's a lot of squats. Oh, this guy's big in the squatting scene as well, the big head honcho of the squatters. And in fact, he seemed to have his finger in very many pies in activities involved in the anarchist movement and the alternative scene around the Hackney area where he lived. The person that was raped by him, if ever she was going to go to a function in this scene, he had to be told not to be there. She had to tell them to tell him not to go. If by any chance he turned up where she was, she had to leave. So every day that she wanted to go into a pub or go to a squat party or anything like that, she had to tell these people who had to tell him, and I find that, like, you know, really ridiculous. Well, she went along with it, but, you know, she was a victim. People call her a survivor. I call her a victim because she is a victim not only of the rapist, but her so-called friends, so-called people that have supported this rapist and are pretending to support her, but merely by keeping him around, by mollycoddling him, they are, in fact, perpetrating the whole thing day after day after day. They don't seem to realise that. So anywhere that she went, he was not allowed. She had to provide prior notice, etc., etc. It's a very complicated process. The guy had been removed from the body politic. It wouldn't exactly make any difference, would it? Because he wouldn't be there. Now, there are other things in the process, but I want to go into the thing I found the most amazing, the most contradictory, and the most ridiculous, and the most absurd. This guy hung out in a lot of squat parties. He went to the squat parties in Hackney and beyond. And here, as I later found out, because I didn't really know anything about him, so obviously I had to investigate him and find out what he was about. He was quite a promiscuous little fellow and had slept with quite a few women. That is why a lot of women were defending him. Apparently he exerted some sort of hold over them. It wasn't a physical, brutal hold, but I think that they all subscribe to the same sort of weird ideology, and so therefore it kind of binds them together like a group of religious nuts or something. And we all know what happens when there's sexual harassment in religious groups, from the African churches in Hackney to the Church of Rome itself. They all hide the fact, and this is what was going on. The person that's a victim is persecuted by the churches and the sects and the cults and so on. But anyway, I want to get back to this other business of what exactly that I find really weird. Every time this man went out, if one could call him a man, this creep, this piece of slime, every time he went out to a squat party or a social event and so on, they had to go with him. So he had a Praetorian guard of anarchist feminists everywhere he went. This was, I don't know, to protect him or, you know, to... I really don't know. Apparently, one of the excuses they gave was it was to prevent him from getting up to too much hanky-panky, and they would be keeping an eye on him. Oh, you know, all this fuss over one rapist. But anyway, let me get back to what I found out. That as part of this process, and I'm not kidding you here, this is the truth, as everything else I've said, that if he was still allowed to pick women up at raves and squat parties and so on, still allowed to do that under the steely gaze of the politically correct Harrodin sisters, still allowed to do that. From what I understand, though, he had to tell the women that he'd raped somebody. This is part of the process. But when did he tell them? Was it when he was in the squat? Oh, hi, you know, and, you know, a lot of political, non-sexist verbal diarrhea, followed by a, oh, by the way, I've raped somebody. Do you fancy coming home with me tonight? And my feminist sisters that I live with will escort us back and make sure that nothing bad happens. Or, which I doubt very much, it's not much of a chat-up line, really, is it? I suspect that what happened was he was allowed to pick up women, go back to the feminist squat, have sex with a woman, and if it looked like a relationship was developing, then say to them, oh, by the way, I'm a rapist. And probably like, oh, but don't worry, I'm not that bad of a rapist because I live in a house full of feminists. And if I was that bad, they would have probably cut my bullocks off rather than be providing me breakfast in the morning and a roof over my head and so on. So at what point was he to tell the unfortunate person that he picked up and gone out with that he was a rapist? I don't know. But I don't think it was in the initial phase. I think that it was after he'd had horizontal relationships, and if she come back for more. I don't know why she come back for more. The guy doesn't look like a stud or anything like that. But, you know, what do I know? Like, you know, I'm pretty old. I don't know. I don't know what goes on with people today all that much. But I do know this: you should not shelter a rapist. So there you have it. It's perverse, isn't it? The man's living in a house full of feminists, anarchist feminists. They take him out. They feed him. They mollycoddle him, and God knows what else with him. And they escort him to squat parties, and if he picks women up, they don't go up to women and say, oh, by the way, this guy's a rapist. Oh, no, it's as though nothing happens. You know, he can take them home, he can sleep with them. And afterwards, at some point, well, I do believe that in two cases, one of the women found out, and actually that was it, didn't want to see him anymore. And another one has established some sort of relationship with him, which just goes to show you the sickness of our scene, the sickness of it. It is sick. So anyway, as I say, to this day I have been... oh, there's another thing as well I forgot to mention as part of the process. Every couple of weeks, or every week, he had to go to the accountability group, where for hours on end he sat round in a meeting full of women, presumably, confessing his sins, trying to find out, you know, why he done what he done. I mean, I don't know what it was all about. All these people, none of them have got professional qualifications. None of them have got any idea of how to deal with a sociopath, because that's what you're dealing with there, a sociopath. They presume that they can somehow cure him, and that's another thing as well, to cure him. So he goes to the accountability groups, he lives this strange lifestyle protected by feminists, and at the end, after he's done his act of contrition by going to the accountability group X number of times, he's suddenly rehabilitated, because I can't see what any other reason for doing this is. He's rehabilitated and allowed to go back into the movement again as though he's never fucking done anything wrong. Well, he ain't coming back into any part of any movement I'm part of. Or is he coming back into part of any movement anybody I'm associated with as well? And he probably will get a fucking kicking. And, you know, if he goes rushing to the police, I don't care. I'm not going to do it personally, because I'd probably kill him. But somebody else will. He probably might be assaulted by a woman or something, beaten up by women. These women should have beaten him up, not fucking fed him and probably slept with him. So why were these women so fond of him? Why did they think he was worth rehabilitating and so on? It's difficult to say. I think it might be because they share the same ideology as kind of anarcho-feminism. It's got nothing to do with real feminism. It's got nothing to do with women. It's got nothing to do with anarchism. It's got nothing to do with freedom. It's just a clique and a cult, an elite of lower middle class people that have got a disdain for the rest of the population for being heteronormative and for being straight and for being sexist and so on. In other words, they are misanthropic, and all of this under the banner of anarchism. I find it quite fucking disgusting, actually. I don't regard these people as anarchists. I would say fascists. They're like fascists. But they don't subscribe to National Socialist ideas, but they certainly behave like fascists. And I think there's a lot of people that I've known as fascists have probably got a deeper sense of honour than ideology aside, you know, and would have reacted quite differently, along with any other group of human beings, to this. But they certainly would not have taken a rapist into their bosom and also hid it from the rest of the movement. And this is what these people did. They are criminals, a scum. They think I'm scum, I think they're scum. But at least I've got an opportunity now. If these were men, I would have dealt with them. But they're women, you can't deal with them, you can't shout at them, you can't assault them, and so on. This is the only way I have of expressing myself. And so I take great pleasure in doing it. And it's really got a lot off my chest. So, what else have I discovered? I've discovered this. That this guy had slept with so many women. It's unbelievable. I mean, if you were to see the guy, you go, what woman would want to sleep with a guy like that? But apparently he's got all the patter, hasn't he? all the non-sexist patter that makes women in our scene feel so secure in his presence. I don't know how many notches he's got in his bed, but he's got plenty, and there's plenty of people out there willing to defend him. And the people that were defending him the most vociferously, or most of the people that were defending him vociferously, I suspect were sleeping with him or had sexual relations with him, right? Which is their business, but, you know, if your lover turns out to be an undercover cop, you're not going to defend him, are you? You don't want to see him anymore. And also, if your lover turns out to be a fucking rapist, you don't want to see him anymore. But they actually do want to see him, and they want to defend him against brutes like me, like, you know, that give him rough justice, and the rest of the anarchist movement that would give him rough justice. So, what else did I find out? Well, I found out something really embarrassing. I found out that most of the people that were defending him, plus others, all these women were in some sort of sexual cult. It's called polyamory. Now, it's not having sex with parrots or anything like that. You know, I don't want to make light of it. But basically, it's wife swapping with and husband swapping without wives and husbands. To me, having investigated it, it seems to be full of lies, deceit, control, but again, elitism. They think that they're better. Oh, we're polyamorous, we're better than everybody else. We can handle, like, we can have 2 or 3 relationships at the same time without jealousy. Look at these pamphlets from California that show us how to do it and so on. What a load of old bollocks to turn your sex life into a fucking ideology. The Marquis de Sade did that, and you know, these people are doing it as well. And of course, to be part of their polyamorous cult, I mean, who the fucking I want to sleep with any of them anyway? They're all fucking disgusting. But well, to my eyes anyway. No, I'm going to get a lot of flack to this, but I just say I'm getting it off my chest. This is therapeutic for me. What am I supposed to do? Roll under a stone and be insulted by these people? So yeah, they're in a polyamorous sex cult, which I didn't know anything about, and it was only after discovering the rape that I actually found out about this. And I was quite shocked that there was people that I knew and had respect for that were involved in this, and they've all coalesced together. They've all come together to protect this rapist. They've all come together to justify this accountability group and to isolate people like me that would, how shall I say, mete out slaps and banishing orders. Now, as I said, I could go into great detail about this, and I could even sit down and probably write a small book or a play about it, right? But this is a better way of doing it. Just speak for about half an hour and 40 minutes, get it off your chest, let other people know. And if people say, oh, there's people from the EDL and the Socialist Workers' Party and the British National Party and the police are going to be listening to you and hearing what you say. You know, you're going to disgrace us in front of our own movement. Well, I say a movement that will tolerate a scene that would tolerate someone like that ain't worth keeping, and they're part of the problem, and they're going to be swept away just the same as all the moralists and nonsense, church, everything. A revolution, we sweep them away, and these people are part of the problem. They're not part of the solution. The solution lies with us, with ordinary people. We sort out these things much better than these people do. As I say, if somebody raped your mum, what would you do? Well, do I have to? Or your sister, or your lover, what would you do about it? Well, we know damn well what you do. You get your mates, you get other people, you go around and do them in. And, you know, women can do it as well. But what do I find here? This case is still unresolved. It's still going on. I'm still being persecuted. This is 9 months later after I've outed the bastard. I find myself isolated. As I said, I can't go to certain social events and so on. People I've never met cross the street when they see me because they think I'm some kind of a bastard. Well, now they've got a good reason for crossing the fucking road, because they would have seen this and they would have seen my anger. I say that this ideology, that this attitude has got absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with anarchism. It's got nothing whatsoever to do with freedom, sexual freedom, feminism, or anything at all. Who are the accountability groups anyway? Who are they accountable to? They're not accountable to us, and they're not accountable to the rest of the population, who will be his victim, or the victim of people like him. Since this case, there's been another one. Different circumstances, different people involved, but another person that has sexually abused women, has actually raped women, and so on. And what are they doing? These are a different group of people. They're under the same sort of influence. They're not all polyamorous, but though some of them are. What are they doing? Why, they're forming an accountability group. They want him to have therapy. I think that the end result of all this is to rehabilitate the guy. Well, we don't want the guy. We're not interested. I mean, yes, a brutalized child soldier from the Congo who's raped and killed, I think is a victim as well, and you have to make an attempt to rehabilitate these people. In various African nations, they are doing it with a great deal of success. But someone that calls himself a fucking anarchist or a feminist and so on and does these things is far worse than any child soldier, and they know exactly what they're doing. They know it's in exact contradiction to their ideas. So therefore, we should come down on an even more heavier ton of bricks. It's what you might call a double crime even. I use the word crime. I'm not talking about the law or anything. I'm talking about, what we would regard as a crime. So that's it, really. There's another case. This problem will remain unresolved until people in our movement or our scene get together and deal with it properly, just the same as anyone else would deal with it. So I know that there's been a different kind of, and difficult for me to say, and a different kind of thing, and I've done it all in one take. There's a lot of other things I want to say, but it would just be, how shall I put it, repetition, and it would identify people, and I don't particularly want to identify people, even my tormentors, although I would dearly love to, and dearly love to say their names and so on, and I do, to people I know and people that I are close to. And I've received a vast amount of support. But why should I have received support? I haven't done anything. This guy's done the stuff. He's getting the support. So yeah, if you've got someone that's a nonce, someone that's a rapist, someone that beats up their partner, don't hide it. Expose it. Deal with it. And as I say, even if people, want to take it to the police and the courts, not that that will do much good. I haven't got any objection to that. Because if it's a question of taking it to the police and taking it to the courts and the accountability process and everything that it involves, I'd say to the person, look, you ain't got any chance of justice, but you've got more fucking chance of justice if you take it to the courts and you take it to the police. So it's very unusual for an anarchist to say that, but I say what I think. I don't say a thing because it's written down in a book made in California or it's in some anarchist article. I just think as I think. I want people to be free. I want sexual relationships to be free and so on. But anarchism doesn't mean the right to rape, the right to abuse human beings, children and so on. It's antisocial. It's got nothing to do with anarchism. And as far as I'm concerned, rough justice is more than appropriate. So I'll sign off for now and return with other things to talk about.